going. You're welcome on a Thursday. It makes a difference, and it's so good to see you. Christmas good to you, was it, Feargal?
Yeah, I must say, lovely. Very, very. The way I like it, nice and quiet. We chilled out as a family, and no forced routine, as a man says.
No,
It was relaxed. It was. But we stayed home and sort of just go out and meet friends. And
did you take some of the traditionality of your wonderful Warren Point parish on board? Their new church there is renovated, all the rest of it. You celebrated that, I suppose.
Yeah, quietly, yeah. I on the Boxing Day or St. Stephen's Day, sort of, was in that church, and again the following day, and John Kearney did some nice ideas on the Friday. He had
that's St. Peter's, isn't it?
Yeah, he had mince pies and sort of stuff after.
Really?
For the half time. I just credit a little bit. I think, to be fair, it's nice. See, there's a lot of people, not massive numbers. There's a lot of people. Christmas can be quite a lonely time. So what that does is it's over in 10 or 15 minutes, but actually it means it's a social thing. You've been to church very quickly, and then you can go on and have a cup of tea or coffee with somebody. Yeah. And that little bit of interaction, I think, also makes a contribution to the Christmas spirit.
But of course, the big thing about Christmas for you has always been the wonderful business lunch for the community of business. Yeah, well, I think it's topped the million this year.
It starts off the Christmas spirit, and it was a nice event. And again, I think Father Peter McVeary and the Reverend Michael Barry were both fantastic.
They were good.
And again, I think it does do good for us, whether it be in the business community, the civic community, or indeed the voluntary community. It does do good for us to pause.
Absolutely. There's no danger to it. You're going to keep doing it, are you? The million isn't the sign-off mark.
Well, whatever, but me personally, I hope it continues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think, to be honest with you, from a personal point of view, I think there comes a time when it's time to perhaps move on and other people do things. So I suspect that may be the issue.
Okay.
But
a different approach in the year ahead,
I think you got to keep changing stuff. I mean, I have no strong views, but my gut feeling is I think
we'll see what happens.
In a few months' time, we'll look at all those things in the round.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, in the round, we now begin to come of age because Secretary of State's going to talk today, and she may be announcing the devolution of fiscal powers to the Stormont Executive, which will allow us control over our special corporation tax. Is that likely?
Well, I think there's a couple of issues there. I think it's now going to be quite tight in this Parliament. I think it was significant yesterday, unfortunately, that Labour are not supporting it.
No.
So I think that it is very important now that they get it through. Reading and listening to current affairs in the mainland, they do not see many significant more sittings of Parliament between now and the next election. So I think she will have to convince her Tory colleagues of the importance of this piece of legislation, get it through. If I was her, I'd do it, because I think if you want, I think if you look at her term as Secretary of State, it'll give her an opportunity to identify with a particular project.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen before the general election in May, it could be set back a year and a half, 2 years. By the time they start getting up to speed.
It could be set back even more, because I mean it needs the buy-in of the British government, because the key to the whole corporation tax is that Westminster Parliament must pass legislation to allow it to devolve tax-raising powers to regional assemblies. So there's no, because of the game of politics at Westminster, one never knows what could happen. Once something doesn't happen, there's no guarantee it will then happen.
Oh, aye, absolutely. In essence, we want the powers because it allows us to say to Mr. Big Business, we are going to charge you 12% tax. That's your corporation tax, and we're going to enhance our own coffers as a consequence.
Well, I wouldn't want to say not Mr. Big Business. It also allows us to hold on to our own indigenous business, which is mobile, because tax is a key cost of business, and if you can minimise your tax costs, then you look at locations. I think more importantly, from a Northern Ireland perspective, is the reality. Why we got to where we are now, one can argue for 100 years, but the reality is we are exceptionally dependent on the public sector. That is not a bad thing in times of austerity that we've come through. It means you don't fall as far, but unfortunately it also means when things pick up, you don't enjoy the wealth creation of a private sector. So what that really means is, sorry to answer your question.
No, you're fine.
What that really means is, if we're going to make any type of game-changing impact on that particular statistic, which is fundamental to everything we do, our health or education, we will have to attract more foreign direct investment and more transfer knowledge of businesses. And the simple reason for that is that even if we perform super among ourselves, because we're starting from such a small base, we couldn't get the scalability which would make a dramatic impact. So that is the reason why the 12.5 or whatever low tax rate they bring in should be attractive over a long period of time, 5 to 10 years.
Yes, we want that to happen.
It also is pretty good from our point of view, because we're not as because of our European status, we don't have the same funds available for grants or financial incentives, and with the risk that London may someday, South East England, say we're not giving these people just the money, the level of money we gave them before. The advantage of taxes, and that's why they did it in the South, because they didn't have exchequer funds. Is it allows you from within to attract without having major financial resources, which I think long term will suit us.
The other thing about the subvention from Westminster, it seems to me, it doesn't do us any good in the long term. We develop a sort of a fiscal soft underbelly. We haven't the hard cutting edge of the entrepreneurial competitive world.
Yeah, but the reality is, Westminster has to take a fair bit of responsibility where we are today, but the reality is, I think the very eminent economist once said in the last 12 months of the FPM or PKF FPM leadership event, that if we didn't have it, our standard of life would be less than Bavaria.
Wow.
So, you know, make no mistake about it, we couldn't survive over a period of 5 to 10 years without it. Now, I think if there was ever any long-term strategic thought process, it's not the type of thing that would disappear over 5 or 10 years. It would be a strategy over 30 years. But,
30, yeah, we could handle it over 30 years, the gentle phasing out of it, and the growth of the other area of entrepreneurialism.
But that's the type of period you're talking about, make no mistake.
Pressure on the retail sector at the moment?
Well, I think what you're seeing is, you're seeing, first of all, evidence of a very competitive sector. You're seeing people, some businesses doing well by perception. Profitability is difficult, and that competitiveness is forcing out. Some of those businesses aren't doing well, but I think they'll be replaced. I think it's not where we were 5 years ago, where you had continuous and growing vacant space. I think vacant space will be replaced with new businesses.
Yeah, so that's healthy. You know, the process of economic evolution continues, the survival of the strongest.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, it's the old saying, you've got to stay competitive and make sure you're in the higher side of the median.
Yeah.
So that when things go wrong, you're still there.
You have a wee bit to give.
And I think what you're really seeing is the flattening out of a recession, where people who've hung in there maybe could have gone earlier. They're going now because they don't have that little bit of fat that's required to invest for the future.
Yeah. What are pushing the buttons at the moment? At this time in the early year, in the accountancy practices of the land. In your own case, what are the issues?
Obviously, tax 31st of January deadline for personal tax returns is quite significant, but probably the most significant piece of new accountancy guidelines for many years has come in, which will impact virtually all business. A thing called FRS 102. Don't worry about what it is, but the reality is that most people's financial statements and how they interpret what goes into them will actually change over the next 2 years, 3 years. So that is it's affecting financial statements beginning the 1st of January this year. Again, not getting technical, but people will eventually appreciate this is actually quite dramatic for their businesses.
Really, for business? Is this business or is it ordinary? It's business banking.
Business accounting. So, and ultimately, you got to remember, most people do business with you if they start doing any type of due diligence or corporate governance review. They ask for a copy of your accounts. So your accounts are very important for raising finance, for doing business, for credibility. So it will have an impact. I suppose I think we're seeing a little bit of merger and acquisition activity. I think we're seeing a little bit of there's interest out there, and certainly we have clients who are in the acquisition mode, which is good. That hadn't been the case up to maybe the last 15 months. I think that we're also seeing, from our own point of view, we're seeing the whole area. People are becoming more conscious of succession. They're becoming more conscious of a holistic approach to wealth management, that it's not just for investment money, it's not just in tax in isolation, but it's the integration of investment, it's the integration of tax, it's the integration of succession, and one further point, it's the integration of personal and business together. And that basically, if you think about it from an economy that is mainly SME driven, mainly family business driven, there you can't separate the two. And yet, despite all the hustle and bustle, it's amazing when you say to somebody who's maybe been running business for 40 years, what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to be in 5 years? What would you like to do?
He's not going to have an answer for that.
Well, to be
often.
honest with you, if he doesn't come out of his routine and give you that answer, the truth is he or she is creating a time bomb for the future. Because to be honest with you, if they want to go and tour the world with each other, then you can't just do it overnight. We have to start looking for who are the leaders of the future. How are we going to distribute the assets? How are they going to be distributed fairly? Can we pay the taxes that will arise? Can we deal with the cash flow? You know, and to answer your question bluntly, you said he wasn't going to answer that question.
I have a vision of a certain type of old-style businessman.
I'm not talking about old style. I'm talking about somebody 40.
Yeah.
I mean, I started. I'm 54. Yeah. I started business succession 14 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, this isn't an event. This is a process. You can never forecast the future, certainly, but there's one sure thing. If you don't have a destination, you'll never get there.
Yeah.
So you have to basically put things in place. Now, to come back to the point you made, which is a very important point, if you think about that, if he can't answer that question, or if he hasn't given it thought, serious thought, as opposed to flipping, he's a problem, because he doesn't have a destination.
But you guys are there. That's why you're there, to take that man or that woman and to guide him through that evolutionary process. He might be good at making buns or building houses, but he's not necessarily in that kind of mindset, and he'll lean to you and he'll say, you know, guide me.
Well, now, hold on now. Hopefully he will. But the point I'm making to you is, it's a really important point, you don't want me stressing it, that this is not purely an accountant-client relationship. This is a little bit more. This is a trusted business advisor relationship. And what you're really saying to this individual is, look, you've got to stand back. You've got to work on the business rather than in the business. You've got to integrate personal with business objectives. And more importantly, you have to talk those through with either the next generation or your existing management, or if they're not there, well then, you know, the next person you hire may not be the right one, but if you don't start hiring people quick and trying to put resources into place, it's not going to happen. The geniuses of this world, are those people who, the future tomorrow, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 minutes' time, but those people who take reasonable steps to allow for the future, to plan for the future, to put a little bit of flexibility into those plans, but who said, this is where I want to go. It is really sad, can I tell you, really sad, as I do now and again, to get that dreaded phone call. Could I come and see you? I got a bit of bad news.
Oh my God, yeah.
Now,
that's a health thing.
Yeah, somebody comes in and they says, you know, X. Now, the good news is that so long as we're above the ground, we can sort it out.
Oh yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Nothing to fear.
Nothing to fear.
But
to do it.
But it's easier to do it if there has been thought into it. And may I add one further point? That time bomb I was telling about. There is nothing worse than the next generation not knowing what's in your will.
Wow. Wills are important then. They must know.
And not only your will, but your whole thought process. If you leave that, if you run away from that, you're leaving a time bomb.
You sense that our people like that still in significant numbers?
90%. 90%.
Really?
90% of people don't want to face that. They'll talk about everything. They'll talk about the weather, they'll talk about the food, they'll talk about anything. But the forbidden word is there are children who could be 40 or 45 years of age running the business, maybe bringing the business from nowhere, still don't know if they're going to own it or not. Still don't know what percentage share they're going to get.
Oh, yeah. It's the adage is to fail to plan is to plan to fail.
That's correct.
And that kind of sums it up. Anything else in your program there before we move on then?
Well, I suppose I think going forward, we need to be optimistic. We need to have, certainly I'm doing a session now with my colleagues very shortly. I'm going back to the office, and the spirit, the whole staff team, and for about half an hour, the whole spirit of that will be that we must have confidence in our own ability and self-belief that whatever the challenges arise, that we as a team have the intellectual capital and the guts and the passion and the hunger in our belly to meet those challenges as they arise. And we must have that confidence and self-belief. That is not an arrogance. It's a totally different thing. What it's saying is we can't control what happens around us, but we can control our response.
Go well, take care. Feargal McCormack.